Did you know that Michael Jackson was deeply involved in the composition for the music in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but in 1994 when...
Oh my god, it totally works. Oh man, I knew this thing would come in handy someday. Yeah, John was about to just blow right through the intensely complicated history of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and I'm sorry, but no, this is a subject that is far too near and dear to me, and one that I actually got to play a personal role in. Not only that, the history is so complicated that it really can't fit into just some 5-minute intro to a Let's Play. I mean, it really doesn't even belong in one video on its own. So we're going to do things a little differently this time and give each aspect of Sonic 3's development its own space. And perhaps the most infamous part of that development, certainly the one with the most theories behind it, is the involvement in the game's soundtrack of a musician who ultimately went uncredited, Michael Jackson. Now, to really understand the connection between Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Michael Jackson, we have to go all the way back to October 1988 to one of the finest music videos ever made. If you're not as intimately familiar with this most iconic music video, let me introduce you. Smooth Criminal wound up being one of Michael Jackson's most treasured songs, as well as one of the most recognizable music videos ever made. So much so that it inspired a cover in 2001 by Alien Ant Farm that had its own major following.
She was sitting at the table, you could see she was a neighbor. So she ran into the bedroom, she was struck down, it was her doom. Annie, you okay? You okay? You okay, Annie?
As it turns out, Smooth Criminal was being written as far back as 1985, with a demo called Chicago 1945 being written in 1986, and then added to the anniversary album Bad 25 as Al Capone. We're not here for Al Capone, we're here for Smooth Criminal. Now, the reason I bring up Smooth Criminal, aside from it being a fucking awesome music video, is because it actually comes from the intensely bizarre 1988 movie Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. The Smooth Criminal segment is the only part of the movie with an actual plot, and features Michael trying to save his friends, 3 children, one of which is played by John Lennon's son Sean, from a man named Mr. Big, who wants to get all the children on Earth addicted to drugs. It was the 80s, everything was drugs. Hell, drugs were probably the prime contributor to not 1, not 2, but 3 different versions of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, the video game. Oh boy. Up first, we have the home computer version released on July 24th, 1990 by US Gold. You know, the guys behind Mega Man for Game Gear. Then there was the arcade version, co-developed by Sega and Triumph and released on the same day. And finally, there's the Genesis version most people think of, developed exclusively by Sega and released on August 24th. In each game, Michael is once again looking to help his child friends and take down Mr. Big. In the Genesis version, the levels and their soundtrack are based on Smooth Criminal, Billie Jean, Bad, Another Part of Me, Thriller, and Beat It. Anyway, 1990 was Michael Jackson's debut into the world of video games, at the same time that Sega was making Sonic the Hedgehog, reutilizing some of these sound effects for the game's creation. After the wild success of Sonic 1 and 2, as well as the growing popularity of Dreams Come True, Masato Nakamura decided that he would need to be paid more for his time working on the Sonic series, as well as for music already being used in the series like the main theme of both games. As such, Sega opted to pass on Nakamura's involvement, and the sudden absence of a music director piqued the interest of Michael Jackson and his production team. Sega jumped on the offer immediately since Michael was at the height of his fame and in the midst of an enormous world tour, and he brought a number of his collaborators with him, particularly keyboardist and percussionist Brad Buxer. While all this was going on, Sonic CD was being produced in Japan, with a soundtrack heavily influenced by a musical genre known as New Jack Swing, one popularized by Harlem musician Teddy Riley, who just so happened to be the producer for Michael Jackson's album Dangerous. To this day, it is still unclear the exact influence that Michael had over the themes on these games, and even though Sega insists that his influence was completely removed, it's clear that there is some element of his music that made it into the final product. Here are the 3 biggest theories that got this ball rolling. On September 23, 2003, Ben Mallison, who went by Ben2K9 on the Sonic Classic forums, made the passing observation that Carnival Night Zone's music had elements that sounded eerily like the 1991 Michael Jackson song Jam. It was eventually proven that not only did they use the exact same 6-note progression, but the song also used a compressed sample of rapper Heavy D saying Jam. Sometime after this, a user named Dioxaz noticed that Ice Cap Zone bore some similarities to both Who Is It and Smooth Criminal. While Stephen Nipper, also known as Shade, found an incredibly close sound between the game's credits theme and 1996's Stranger in Moscow. This piqued the interest of lots of Sonic fans, but it didn't pick up much steam until it was corroborated by a September 2005 interview between user XHC and STI director Roger Hector, who served as executive producer for the game. It was this interview that finally confirmed that yes, Sega brought in Michael Jackson to compose music for Sonic 3, but as a result of the charges brought against him that summer, his contract was terminated and the content was allegedly stripped from the game. Now this would seem to be backed up by the existence of a soundtrack for Sonic & Knuckles Collection on PC, in which several of the themes from Sonic 3 ended up changed. At first, it would seem that the music change was specifically the songs Michael Jackson and his team most likely worked on, but this was eventually revealed to be a bit of a red herring. Instead, it more likely came down to sound hardware. You see, the Sonic & Knuckles collection music was done using the MIDI format, one that didn't play nice with real, actual sound effects the way the noise channels of some game consoles did. As a result, Carnival Night's Glass Shatter, the Jam Sample, the Go Yells and Launch Bass Zone, and many more required those themes to be replaced. Emboldened by the evidence presented in this interview, James Hansen, also known as Qjimbo, made a video titled Michael Jackson's Sonic 3 and posted it to YouTube on March 20th, 2006.
So was that it? Was Michael Jackson's music simply replaced? I don't think it was, and I'll show you why.
The internet went nuts. Now remember, YouTube as a platform was less than a year old at the time, and this was one of its first truly viral videos, reaching more than 1 million views that summer alone. That day, the video was spread far and wide across the internet, gaining attention in both the Sonic and Michael Jackson fan communities. Immediately, people started investigating the musicians involved in the game's soundtrack and discovered that nearly all of them had worked directly with Michael Jackson at some point in their careers, most of them right after the game. Only one person credited remained a mystery, someone simply referred to as Sirocco. Doing a little internet sleuthing, I was actually able to find out that Sirocco was a musician named C. Sirocco Jones, whose website musicpowers.com stated that he'd worked with Brad Buxer on, quote, levels 2 and 3 of Sonic the Hedgehog on a piece called simply The Water. This sounded an awful lot like Hydro City Zone to me, so on March 21st, 2006, I sent Sirocco an email. Hey there, my name is Rick D. I was wondering if there was a chance I could ask you a few questions regarding your involvement in writing a handful of the tracks used in the 1994 Sega Genesis game, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I apologize for bringing this up so suddenly, but in recent weeks there's been an explosion of interest and research going into figuring out the basis of many of the tracks from the game. Initially started with research into the remains of what Michael Jackson had done for the soundtrack. It was later found that remnants of his songs wound up in the game. If you want, I can link you to a video detailing what is currently being speculated about it. In short, would it be alright if I could ask you a few questions about the tracks you wrote? Also, would it be possible to get a short clip, 30 seconds should be more than enough, of the song The Water that you wrote with or for Michael Jackson? A frankly surprising 90 minutes later, I got a response. LOL. I actually have all of the tracks, from the original humming of Michael calling in the middle of the night leaving messages, to his ideas at record 1 with Matt and Bruce. But I don't think I can let any of that out to the public without permission. Anyway, you can call if you like. Unfortunately, that meeting ultimately fell through, what with a combination of technological hurdles coming from 18-year-old broke me in 2006, as well as a bit of a fracturing going on in the Sonic fan community at the time. That said, digging back through my time on that forum, I found two things I noticed that, as far as I can tell, were actually new findings. On July 10th, I made a post noticing a connection between the credits theme and the final boss music that was later reused in Sonic & Knuckles. Now, this is huge. If this turns out to be true, and it kinda looks like it is, then that means that not only did Michael Jackson have direct involvement with the soundtrack for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but even after Sega tried to scrape out as much as they possibly could, he may have still had a residual impact on the music of Sonic and Knuckles. In addition, on October 5th, I made a post pointing out that Knuckles' theme, and the mini-boss's theme by extension, had drum tracks that sounded almost identical to that of Blood on the Dance Floor, which was recorded in 1991, but remained unreleased until 1997, long after the game came out. The following day, I had made mention that I was still in contact with Sirocco and said that I would try to reach out to him again, but in all of my digging, I wasn't able to find any of the emails that we had going back and forth. And things kind of quieted down for a while, until the spring of 2008, where some new details emerged. Sometime between March 4th and May 5th of that year, Sirocco made some updates to his website and notably removed the title The Water from the details of his involvement with Sonic 3. Then on May 13th, a user named SpexFox was able to prove that the glass shattering sound in Carnival Night Zone was in fact the same shattering sound from In the Closet. A few months later, in August of that same year, the members of the Sage Expo IRC channel were able to secure an interview with Howard Drawson, the Sonic Spinball composer brought in at the very end of Sonic 3's development in order to clean up the music before release. There wasn't a ton of new information learned, but what was interesting was that Sega had their own Masaru Setsumaru handle the digitization of his compositions. You might not recognize his name, but I bet you recognize his work. Yeah. Sonic Eraser. I don't know how they thought that was a good idea either. Anyway, the other interesting thing they found out was that Howard had joined up on the assumption that he'd be working with Michael, but ended up being the cleanup guy while Sega pushed as hard as they could to get away from his scandal. Interestingly enough, in February 2009, Sega released Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, which included among the trivia for Sonic 3 that Michael Jackson was originally meant to compose the game's music, the first official acknowledgement made by Sega directly. It seemed like a pretty open and shut case until the November-December 2009 issue of Black and White, a French magazine that featured an interview with keyboardist Brad Buxer. In the interview, Buxer suggested that Michael removed his credit intentionally after being unhappy with the sound quality of the Yamaha YM2612 chip in the Sega Genesis. He also confirmed that the credits theme was in fact the basis for Stranger in Moscow, the most collaboration Buxer had with Michael on any song, one that took only 2 hours to write and which Buxer wrote the bulk of the instrumentation for. Things went quiet again until 2013, when it was revealed that everyone's assumptions about Ice Cap Zone were 100% wrong. It had nothing to do with Who Is It had nothing to do with Smooth Criminal, and had everything to do with an unreleased 1982 song from the Jetsons called Hard Times, which was released on a 2008 album called The Complete Jetsons. The keyboardist and co-writer for that song? Brad Buxer.
Take your things
Finally, we have the October 14th, 2013 episode of Game Trailer's Pop Fiction titled Sonic 3 Michael Jackson. In this, the Game Trailers team went whole hog into investigating this mystery and seemed to have confirmed both sides of an apparently contradictory story, but came to the conclusion that Michael had in fact been unhappy with the sound quality and started backing off personally while letting his team continue. But after the allegations came out, Sega put some distance between them as well, with Roger Hector reportedly saying that perhaps it was for the best that they parted ways given all the controversy. One neat factoid that hadn't been uncovered at all before is that Michael had actually tried to get Black or White into the game in some way, but it was eventually declined. That said, this probably means that somewhere Sega has a digitization-ready version of the song. So while there are many details that are still missing from this entire mystery, what we know about it gives us a timeline that looks something like this. November 21st, 1992, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is released in Japan. On November 24th, it comes out in North America and Europe, and on December 1st, it comes out in Australia. Michael is reportedly a huge fan. December 12th to the 31st, Michael performs the second leg of his Dangerous Tour, a series of 8 performances in Tokyo, Japan. January 20th, 1993, Michael performs at Bill Clinton's inauguration gala, and on January 31st, he performs at the halftime show for Super Bowl 27 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, starting the continued trend of high-profile musicians headlining the event. Those two aren't super important to this, but it just seems kind of neat. March 8th. During practice for the third leg of the Dangerous Tour, Michael sprains his ankle badly. The next night, March 9th, Michael performs and accepts awards in a wheelchair at the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles. Sometime shortly after, Michael, now on crutches, visits the Sega Technical Institute in Palo Alto to congratulate the team on the success of Sonic 1 and 2. An anonymous developer asks Michael if he'd like to write music for Sonic 3. That spring, Sega Technical Institute brings on keyboardist Brad Buxer, engineer Bobby Brooks, sound designer Darryl Ross, orchestrator Jeff Grace, bassist Doug Grigsby, and producer C. Sirocco Jones. Of these 6, the first 5 would all be involved in Michael's next album, History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1, which includes the song Stranger in Moscow. By the end of summer, Michael starts to express disappointment that his compositions aren't translating as well as he expected on the Genesis sound chip. Around the same time, Sega realizes Sonic 3 won't be ready on the schedule they wanted and has Sonic 2's special stage designer Peter Moravec start a new game from scratch for a holiday '93 release. This concept would eventually become Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. Howard Drawson is hired to compose the game's music. August 4th, Evan Chandler meets with Michael, confronting him with a psychiatrist letter suggesting inappropriate behavior took place with his son Jordan over the previous year. Settlement negotiations begin now. On August 13th, Evan Chandler rejects Michael's settlement offer of $350,000. And on August 24th, as Michael begins the third leg of the Dangerous Tour in Bangkok, news of the allegations break. On September 14th, the Chandlers file a civil lawsuit against Michael Jackson. As the allegations become public, Sega pushes to distance itself from Michael, while Michael pushes to distance himself from the sound quality generated by the Sega Genesis, but urges his team to continue working on the soundtrack. Either by intention or accidentally, a number of tracks with known involvement from Michael Jackson remained in the game and would continue to be tuned up without Michael being credited directly. These themes would include at least Knuckles' theme, the Mini-Boss theme, Carnival Night Zone, Ice Cap Zone, the Credits theme, and possibly Launch Base Zone and the Final Boss theme. Other themes that would be changed for Sonic and Knuckles include the Title, Invincibility, and 1-Up themes, and the Zone themes, while left alone for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, were drastically altered for the Sonic and Knuckles collection.
The Final Boss theme ends up being reused unaltered.
Howard Drawson, upon completion of the Sonic Spinball soundtrack, is moved over to the Sonic 3 project to assist with the revamp post-Michael. By this point, Sonic 3 has already been split into 2 games, with Drawson helping clean up Sonic 3 before spending significantly more time working on the whole of Sonic and Knuckles. September 15th, while in Moscow, still on tour, Michael writes the lyrics to Stranger in Moscow using the Sonic 3 credits theme he co-wrote with Brad Buxer as a backing. September 16th, Michael begins recording Stranger in Moscow and continues to work on it periodically until March 1995. Brad Buxer is ultimately not credited for his contribution. September 23rd, Sonic the Hedgehog CD is released in Japan, featuring a soundtrack by the team behind Sonic 2 for Game Gear and Master System, influenced heavily by Teddy Riley's New Jack Swing genre. On October 18th, it arrives in Europe as well. November 12th, after performing 5 shows in Mexico City, Michael cancels the remainder of the Dangerous Tour, citing health problems stemming from the stress of his allegations. November 15th, Sonic Spinball is released in Europe, and on the 23rd in the United States. November 19th, Sonic CD is released in the United States with a completely different soundtrack. February 2nd, 1994, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is released in the United States, into Europe in February 24th, and then much later into the year, May 27th, in Japan. It's been theorized the team was trying to make one complete game for the Japanese audience, but ultimately split the game overseas as well. On October 18th, Sonic & Knuckles is finally released worldwide, and in 1997, Sonic & Knuckles Collection is released worldwide, with Carnival Night Zone, Ice Cap Zone, and Launch Base Zone completely changed. And that's where we stand. 13 years later, and there are still things we don't understand about this mystery. What were the other Michael Jackson songs that would have made their way into Sonic 3? Did he actually have any other impact on Sonic and Knuckles? And just what was on those answering machine tapes that belonged to Sirocco Jones? Oh, I should probably actually throw this back to John before he notices. Before I go, one cool thing. Did you know that Sonic the Hedgehog's shoes were based off of the shoes Michael Jackson wore for the Bad music video? Not a bad music video. It's a music video for Bad. I'm just going to...
And that's why it may not matter if you're black or white, but it does matter if you're black and white.